It all started on a quiet night in a small town where two officers pulled over a well-dressed man driving a luxury car. To them, he didn't look like he belonged. What began as a routine stop quickly turned into something far more disturbing. The officers, ignoring every answer he gave, grew more aggressive. They handcuffed him without proper explanation and started making veiled threats, hinting at charges they could make go away for a price. When he asked what they wanted, they didn't hesitate to throw out a number: $10,000. The man stayed calm, but behind his silence was something they hadn't expected. He wasn't just any driver. What they didn't know, yet, was that he was a judge. And not just any judge, but someone with the power to flip this entire situation on its head. The officers, blinded by their own bias and arrogance, had no idea they were digging themselves into a hole they couldn't climb out of. As they waited for the cash, thinking they had control, the man finally spoke just one sentence that changed everything. Suddenly, the tone shifted. Their confidence cracked. Panic set in. What did he say? And how did this moment turn their careers and lives upside down? Keep watching, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The man looked straight at them, calm but serious, and said, "You really don't know who I am, do you?" That's when one of the officers paused, suddenly unsure. The other still tried to act tough, brushing it off like it didn't matter. But something in the judge's voice made them uneasy. He wasn't yelling or threatening, just speaking with a quiet authority they couldn't quite ignore. Still cuffed, he told them to check his ID again. The officer hesitated, then slowly pulled it from his wallet and took a closer look. His face changed. His hands shook just slightly. This wasn't a random guy in a suit. This was a state judge. Someone who had ruled over criminal cases just like this one. Someone with connections, someone with a voice that mattered. But the real twist: this judge had been working on a private investigation into corruption in local law enforcement. And now, without even trying, he had walked right into proof of it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The officers started whispering to each other, clearly panicked. But it was too late. The body cameras were still on. The dashboard cam was recording everything. And back at the station, someone was already watching it all unfold. Who? And what would they do next? Back at the precinct, a junior officer monitoring the live camera feeds froze when he saw what was happening. He recognized the man immediately: Judge Raymond Ellis, well known for his firm stance on police accountability. The officer didn't know what to do. Reporting it could mean putting a target on his back, but staying silent meant becoming part of the mess. He hit record on his own screen, just in case, and quietly backed up the footage. Meanwhile, on the side of that dark road, the two officers were trying to undo their mistake without making it worse. One nervously uncuffed the judge, stammering something about a misunderstanding. But Judge Ellis didn't move. He just stood there, watching them squirm. It wasn't about revenge for him. It was about exposure. About finally shining light on a system that had protected this kind of behavior for too long. As the night wore on, the tension deepened. Word started spreading through the department, quiet at first. A few officers who had crossed paths with Ellis before started texting each other, wondering how bad this could get. One of them, Sergeant Daniels, had his own secrets, ties to an off-the-books fund that had come up more than once in rumors. And now, with Ellis involved, those whispers were starting to sound like alarms. What would come out next? And who else was hiding something? By the next morning, the footage had already made its way into the hands of someone outside the department, an anonymous source known for leaking internal corruption cases to the media. No one knew how it got out so fast, but the pressure inside the station was boiling over. Officers were whispering in corners, deleting texts, and trying to figure out who had access to the files. Sergeant Daniels called a closed-door meeting with a few trusted colleagues, hoping to contain the situation before it exploded. But trust was in short supply now. Judge Ellis hadn't spoken to the press. He hadn't filed a report. Yet, that silence made everyone even more nervous. Was he planning something bigger? Was this part of his investigation all along? Rumors swirled that he had been working with a federal task force behind the scenes, gathering evidence for months. If that was true, this traffic stop wasn't a mistake. It was the final piece of a much larger puzzle. The two officers who had extorted him had stopped showing up to work. One of them had cleaned out his locker overnight. The other was reportedly seen meeting someone in an unmarked car outside city limits. Panic was spreading, but it was too late to run. The judge had everything he needed. The question now wasn't if justice would come, but how hard it would hit, and who it would hit first. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse for the department, a new twist shook everything. The anonymous leak wasn't just the dashboard footage, it also included a private audio recording from inside the precinct. The clip captured a tense conversation between Sergeant Daniels and a higher-up discussing payouts, falsified reports, and making problems disappear. It was clear now, this wasn't just about two rogue officers. This was a network, and someone had been recording from the inside the whole time. The file hit an independent watchdog group by sunrise, and within hours, social media was flooded with clips. Hashtags like #, Judge Ellis case *, *, policy extortion *, and *, internal cove route * started trending. News vans circled the station. Every officer was under scrutiny. But behind the scenes, something even more dangerous was unfolding. A sealed envelope had been delivered to Judge Ellis' office. No return address, no name. Inside was a USB drive, and on it, surveillance footage from a city-owned parking garage. Showing one of the involved officers meeting the man tied to a past case Ellis had dismissed for lack of evidence. That case? A whistleblower who had vanished shortly after trying to expose a bribery ring involving local officials and police. Now it was bigger than extortion. It was about disappearance, silence, and possibly something far more serious. Judge Ellis had a choice: go public or dig deeper into a truth that might cost him everything. Judge Ellis sat alone in his office, staring at the footage on the USB. The officer in the video wasn't just meeting with a suspicious man. He was handing over what looked like confidential documents. The timestamp matched the night the whistleblower went missing. That's when Ellis knew this wasn't just a corruption case, it was a cover-up that ran deep. He picked up the phone and made a quiet call, not to the media, but to a federal contact he trusted. Within hours, a joint task force was activated. Warrants were issued, and agents moved in before anyone had time to run. The station erupted in chaos. Sergeant Daniels was taken in first, shocked to find his own words from that secret recording played back to him during questioning. Several officers were arrested, and one even tried to flee the state but was caught at the airport. The original two officers who had extorted Ellis. They cut deals and gave up everything: names, dates, accounts. It all started crumbling. But just when it looked like justice had been served, the twist came. One of the highest-ranking officials involved, someone Judge Ellis had known for years, was revealed to be part of the operation. A man who had once mentored Ellis in law school. That betrayal hit deeper than any crime uncovered, and as Ellis stood on the courthouse steps, reporters shouting his name, he realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something even bigger. In the weeks that followed, the investigation led to over a dozen indictments. The city's police chief quietly resigned, and several top officials were placed on administrative leave pending trial. Judge Ellis testified behind closed doors, his statement helping federal agents connect the final dots in a case that had been buried for years. The two officers who had handcuffed him were sentenced, but placed under protection after revealing how deep the corruption really ran. Their actions, though wrong, had accidentally opened the door to something far more dangerous. The whistleblower's case was officially reopened, and new leads brought closure to a family that had waited too long for answers. The young officer who had saved the footage. He was quietly promoted and transferred to a department known for reform work. Judge Ellis returned to the bench, quieter now, but more determined than ever. What happened to him had exposed more than just a few bad cops. It revealed a system in need of rebuilding. And as he looked out over his courtroom weeks later, he knew this wasn't just about one night, one mistake, or one case. It was about standing firm when silence feels easier. Because sometimes, justice begins the moment someone says, "You don't know who I am."